On the morning her father announced her wedding, May Okafor learned she was marrying a man she had never met, and not one person in her family bothered to tell her the engagement had nothing to do with peace at all. Subscribe and stay until the end, because the real reason behind this marriage was something neither family wanted, spoken aloud. For 3 generations, the Okafor family and the Vance family had controlled opposite ends of the same shipping corridor. 2 criminal empires separated by a river and decades of carefully maintained hostility. Neither family had started a war in over 20 years, not because they trusted each other, but because both understood war would cost more than either side could afford to lose. When Daniel Okafor announced that his daughter would marry Marcus Vance, the heir to the rival empire, the entire underworld assumed exactly what they were meant to assume: a peace treaty disguised as a wedding, an alliance sealed in silk and vows instead of blood and bullets. May assumed it too, right up until the moment she discovered the truth buried inside her father's private files, 3 days before the ceremony. May had spent 26 years as her father's most trusted analyst, the quiet daughter who understood the family's financial structure better than anyone else inside the organization, including the lieutenants who had served Daniel Okafor for decades. She had never expected to inherit anything resembling power. She had certainly never expected to be traded like currency in a deal she had no part in negotiating. "This isn't about peace," her father told her the morning he announced the engagement, his voice carrying the particular calm he reserved only for decisions he had already finalized long before informing anyone else. "This is about survival. Yours, mine, everyone who depends on this family." "You're talking about my life like it's a transaction," May said, anger rising beneath careful composure she had spent years perfecting. "Everything in this world is a transaction," Daniel replied. "The only question is whether you understand the terms before they're decided for you." May did not understand the terms. Not yet. But within 72 hours, she would discover a truth that made her father's calm explanation feel like the smallest piece of a much larger, much more dangerous puzzle. Marcus Vance arrived in Okafor territory 2 days before the wedding, surrounded by exactly the kind of security detail expected of a rival family's heir entering enemy ground for a ceremony neither side fully trusted. He was tall, controlled, his expression carved from the particular discipline of a man raised to inherit violence rather than choose it. Their first meeting took place in a private garden behind the Okafor estate, away from the lieutenants and advisors who had spent weeks finalizing logistics neither had been consulted about. "I assume you're as thrilled about this as I am," Marcus said, his tone carrying dry amusement rather than genuine warmth. "I assume neither of us actually had a choice," May replied. Something flickered behind his eyes, recognition rather than offense. "No, we didn't." For a moment, an unexpected understanding passed between them. 2 people who had spent their entire lives being groomed for power, neither had ever truly chosen, now finding themselves bound together by decisions made entirely without their input. "Do you actually believe this marriage will create peace?" May asked. Marcus studied her carefully before answering. "I believe my father wants something from your family. I don't think peace is the actual price he's asking for." The statement lodged itself in May's chest long after Marcus walked away that evening, because it confirmed something she had already begun suspecting on her own. Her father's explanation had been too simple, too convenient, exactly the kind of answer a man gives when the real reason cannot survive being spoken aloud. That night, unable to sleep, May did what she had always done when something felt wrong inside the family's operations. She returned to the financial records she managed every day, searching for anything that might explain why her father had suddenly decided, after 20 years of careful hostility, that marrying his daughter into the Vance family was worth the risk. What she found nearly stopped her heart entirely. Buried inside a series of shell accounts disguised as routine shipping subsidiaries, May discovered massive debt significant enough to collapse the entire Okafor organization within 18 months. Her father had spent 3 years quietly borrowing against the family's future, financing expansion projects that failed to generate the returns he desperately needed, and the primary lender behind those shell accounts was a private banking structure controlled, through several layers of careful obscuring, by the Vance family itself. This marriage was never about peace. It was about debt forgiveness disguised as a wedding gift, a transaction so carefully hidden that even Daniel Okafor's most trusted lieutenants had no idea the organization's survival depended on a deal nobody outside two men had ever been allowed to see. May sat alone with that knowledge until dawn, understanding that she was not simply being married into a rival family. She was being used as collateral in a financial arrangement that could destroy everything she had spent her entire life helping to build, the moment either side decided the marriage no longer served its purpose. She confronted her father the following morning, the financial documents spread across his desk between them. "You're paying off this debt with my marriage," she said, her voice steady despite the fury building beneath it. Daniel did not deny it. He had never been a man who wasted energy on denial once discovery had already occurred. The Vance family agreed to restructure the debt into a generational alliance instead of calling it due immediately. "Your marriage isn't payment, May. It's insurance. As long as you stay married into that family, they have every incentive to keep us solvent rather than destroy us. And if the marriage fails, if Marcus and I can't stand each other in 5 years, then the debt becomes due immediately, and this family loses everything it has spent 3 generations building," Daniel said quietly. "I'm not proud of how I created this situation, but I need you to understand exactly what's actually at stake, because you deserve to walk into that wedding with full knowledge of what you're protecting." The conversation left May with an impossible choice. She could refuse the marriage and watch her father's entire organization collapse within months, destroying the livelihoods of hundreds of people who depended on the Okafor family for protection and income, or she could marry a man she barely knew, fully aware that her marriage existed as collateral in a debt structure designed specifically to keep both families locked into an arrangement neither could easily escape. She chose to tell Marcus the truth before deciding anything else. She found him the following evening, walking alone along the same private garden where they had first spoken honestly with one another. "I need to tell you something," May said. "And I need you to understand I'm telling you because I think you deserve the truth more than my father seems to believe either of us does." She explained everything: the debt, the shell accounts, the marriage structured as insurance against financial collapse rather than genuine alliance. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from careful neutrality into something far more complicated as the full scope of the deception became clear. "My father never mentioned the debt structure to me either," he finally said. "I assumed this marriage was simply about expanding territory neither family wanted to fight over directly. Did you know the actual terms?" "I knew enough to understand I wasn't being asked. I was being informed." Marcus's jaw tightened, years of quiet resentment surfacing in a single sentence. "We're not so different, apparently." For the first time since their engagement began, something resembling genuine partnership passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but something built on shared understanding of exactly how completely they had both been used as instruments in a transaction neither had agreed to. "What do you want to do?" May asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "I want to understand why my father agreed to structure this as generational insurance instead of simply calling the debt and destroying your family outright. That's not mercy. My father doesn't believe in mercy. There's something else happening here that neither of us fully understands yet." His suspicion proved correct within days, when May discovered the second half of the truth buried even deeper inside the financial structure than the first revelation had suggested. The Vance family was not simply forgiving a debt out of strategic patience. They needed the Okafor shipping routes running through territory the Vance organization could not legally access without triggering federal scrutiny already focused on their primary operations. The marriage provided exactly the legitimate cover required to expand Vance shipping access without drawing the attention an outright acquisition would have triggered. In other words, the marriage existed to launder territorial expansion through family legitimacy, using both May and Marcus as the human face of a transaction built entirely around evading law enforcement. Neither family could survive if it escalated. "They're using our marriage to hide a federal investigation risk," May told Marcus once she confirmed the second layer of deception. "If either family backs out now, the structure collapses, and both organizations become vulnerable, not just to each other, but to investigators apparently circling Vance shipping operations for over a year." Marcus absorbed the information with the particular stillness of a man recalculating everything he believed about his own family's priorities. My father told me this marriage represented opportunity. He never once mentioned it represented exposure. The wedding, scheduled for the following evening, suddenly became something far more dangerous than either of them had anticipated even hours earlier. If they proceeded without confronting both families about the true terms hidden beneath polite diplomatic language, they would be entering a marriage neither understood completely, bound together by deception, layered on deception, with consequences neither family had been honest enough to disclose. If they refused to proceed, both organizations faced immediate collapse, financial for the Okafor family, legal for the Vance family, consequences severe enough to destroy thousands of lives connected to both organizations, regardless of which family bore more responsibility for the original deception. May and Marcus made their decision together, in the same garden where their unlikely partnership had first begun forming, beneath the weight of secrets neither had chosen to inherit. They would proceed with the wedding, but not on the terms either family had originally designed. The ceremony took place exactly as scheduled, beneath chandeliers and floral arrangements, giving no outward sign of the financial machinery operating beneath the celebration. Both families gathered, lieutenants and advisors, mingling with careful diplomatic smiles masking decades of distrust, now temporarily suspended for appearances neither side fully believed. But when the officiant reached the final portion of the ceremony, May and Marcus did something neither family had anticipated. Instead of simply exchanging vows and allowing the marriage to quietly seal a transaction built on layered deception, they addressed both families directly, in front of every lieutenant and advisor gathered to witness the supposed alliance. "Before we continue," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd, "I think everyone here deserves to understand exactly what this marriage actually represents." The room fell into uneasy silence. Daniel Okafor's expression hardened immediately, recognizing the danger in his daughter's barely concealed satisfaction. May stepped forward beside her new husband. "This marriage isn't a peace treaty. It's debt restructuring disguised as romance and federal cover disguised as alliance. Both of our fathers built this ceremony around secrets neither of us was ever meant to discover." Gasps spread through the assembled guests. Lieutenants exchanged uneasy glances, recalculating loyalty in real time as the foundation of the agreement they had quietly trusted began visibly cracking in front of them. "We're not refusing this marriage," Marcus continued, before panic could fully take hold. "But we're not entering it blind, the way our fathers intended. If this alliance survives, it survives on terms we negotiate ourselves, not terms hidden inside shell accounts neither of us was ever meant to see." Daniel Okafor's jaw tightened with barely restrained fury, though the public setting prevented any reaction beyond controlled tension. Marcus's father, watching from across the room, wore an expression caught between genuine respect and quiet alarm. What followed was not the wedding either family had planned, but something far more consequential. May and Marcus, standing united in front of both organizations, demanded immediate restructuring of the financial agreement, full transparency between both families about the actual terms of their alliance, and direct involvement in decisions shaping the future of an empire built on debt, deception, and desperate strategic necessity. Both fathers, faced with the public unraveling of carefully constructed secrecy, had little choice but to comply. The alternative, exposing the full scope of their manipulation in front of lieutenants whose loyalty depended on believing leadership operated with integrity, would have destroyed both organizations far faster than honest negotiation possibly could. 6 months later, May and Marcus stood together overseeing a restructured alliance built on terms they had negotiated personally, terms that protected both families from financial collapse and legal exposure without requiring either side to surrender complete control to secrets hidden by the previous generation. "Do you think either of our fathers expected this outcome?" May asked one evening, watching cargo ships move steadily along the shipping corridor that had once divided their families for 3 generations. "I think they expected us to simply accept whatever terms they decided," Marcus said. "I don't think either of them considered what might happen if we actually talked to each other honestly, instead of simply performing the roles we were assigned." May considered that for a long moment. Maybe that was always the actual risk they never accounted for. two people forced together by manipulation, choosing honesty instead of resentment. Their marriage, born from debt and deception rather than genuine choice, eventually became something neither family had designed, a partnership built on the very transparency their fathers had spent years avoiding. The alliance survived, not because two criminal empires successfully merged their interests, but because two people refused to remain pawns inside a transaction built without their consent. And in the end, the marriage that began as collateral for hidden debt became the one thing neither family's manipulation could fully control. A partnership stronger than the secrets that had created it, built on the simple decision to demand truth when everyone around them had decided silence was safer.